All right, I'm ready to go ahead and get started. Welcome to this lightning talk, the ultimate Drupal 8 versus 9 SecDevOps workflow. Essentially, a lot of the things we've been talking about at BlackMesh is related to security, and you'll see some of that today. And with our workflow tool, a big area that we have been focusing on is creating the best SecDevOps workflow. And I wouldn't definitely say we're there yet. We're getting there. Right now, we are just focused on gathering a lot of the requirements. And our tool that we'll show a little bit of today, we call it Cascade, has a flexible way to do a lot of these steps in it. And we are in active development, adding additional features every day. But I'll start by introducing myself and Kelly. I'm Solomon Gifford, Senior Director of CMS Product Development here at BlackMesh, and Kelly Beck, 15-year-old Drupal veteran, doing development, like I said, for about 15 years. So our emphasis today is on talking about what does it mean to have a great SecDevOps workflow. And I'll start by saying that the DevOps and the Agile methodology have really changed how we approach dev and operations, in the past 10 years. And it's now really changing how we approach security as well. And that's a big piece of what we want to talk about. A quick look at BlackMesh. Again, my focus is not to just push BlackMesh, but to really get to the content of security and SecDevOps. But just wanted to kind of give a little bit of introduction of where we're coming from. We specialize in managing complex CMS websites securely at scale. And that really does mean that we're focused on providing solutions around security and SecDevOps. We have DevOps experts available. We have a support team 24/7, 365. Compliance and security is a big piece of what we do, whether it's FedRAMP or HIPAA or PCI. Others we manage in our own data centers. We manage on AWS. Other customers may have infrastructure, and we can manage that. In other words, we don't bring the infrastructure ourselves. And we go beyond just Drupal. Drupal is a big component of what we do. It's a large part of our business. But we also provide support for those platforms that need Drupal Plus, whether it be some Windows boxes or containers or whatever else. And I focused a second ago on the different ways that we deliver hosting. It could be shared, it could be hybrid, dedicated clouds. We could do containers, physicals. We even have a fax server in our data center that a customer needs. So a lot of different scenarios that's not just hosting, but it's also the services that are built on top of that. We don't do development. That is focused. We leave that to our agency partners. But when it comes to DevOps, which is a new form of development, yes, we do that. And so that's kind of the background of where we're coming from at BlackMesh. And I mentioned the security standards. So we are FedRAMP authorized. All of our clouds have some type of certification, whether it's HIPAA, PCI, or FedRAMP. And yes, we can work with GDPR and FERPA and FISMA and a bunch of the other acronyms I could drop all day. But the point is we were the first Drupal hosting provider to focus on security, and we've been doing this for a long time. So that's a little bit of a background on who we are and what we do as a company. But I think what's more interesting is our workflow that we're working on. Cascade is our dev stage prod workflow tool. It has a bunch of quick starts for Drupal and WordPress, but at its core, it allows us to have pipelines, and a pipeline is like Jenkins and like some other tools that do CI/CD. It's really customizable and flexible. So that kind of gives the background or the backdrop for the way we approach our SecDevOps. And when starting to approach SecDevOps, I know it can feel a little bit challenging at first, but the normal way that SecDevOps has been, or security has been approached in the past, is really as a step that is done at the very end of the process. And one of the things that we're preaching is shift left. That really means let's start talking about security much earlier in the process. And that provides that feedback loop and the ability to start doing remediations much earlier in the process. It also provides a shared responsibility and ownership among the whole team. Security is no longer that other team, it's now our team. If you feel overwhelmed, start small and work on continual improvement. The ultimate workflow is not built in a day. But one of the pieces that really helps with this process is automation. So we'll talk about some scanning tools and some other things like that in a second, but really focusing on being able to test, scan, and monitor early on in the process is extremely important. There's a couple pieces that are really important just to have as a backdrop for the entire environment. You have to have separation of duties and separation of data and attribution. We're talking about logging. So the separation of duty is least privilege. When we talk about data separation, try to keep your production data out of your development environment. And attributing is really important for reconstruction of events. You need to know who did what, when, where at all times. And so that's extremely important. Kelly will talk about securing the supply chain, which is extremely important as well. Kelly, you're on mute.
Solomon, and thanks for the nice introduction. As a veteran Drupal developer, my role has been to build end-to-end solutions, which many times means bringing third-party modules or packages from a library, but that introduces the risk of software supply chain attack vectors. So when we think about SecDevOps in this context, we have to think about securing the entire supply chain. And that brings me to sort of a prime directive of security, which is all changes, regardless of their source, must be reviewed before they are deployed into production as a deployment artifact. And when we talk about changes like this, so we're talking about your code, meaning the code that you write. And nowadays, increasingly, we use a thing which we like to refer to as a thin repository. And we're only maintaining the code in these repositories that is yours to maintain. And we bring all kinds of other code in via library packaging systems like Composer. Another one is NPM, it's Yarn. And we bring those changes in via CI/CD pipelines and things like that. And those kind of changes brought in by packaging systems can include third-party libraries, they can include dependency updates, they can include upstream changes, and all in all, very many CI/CD systems are not putting these changes in front of reviewers. So one of the things that we want to do is make sure to capture changes brought in by Composer, capture changes brought in by Yarn, and be able to put them in front of a reviewer for security purposes. And all of these, another place where you can bring changes in is, through your standard manual packaging process, either through Drush or through, grabbing tarballs directly from D.O. But at the end of the day, what your security team needs is the ability to review what is being deployed to live. And for that reason, one of our pro tips is take your thin repository and turn it into a thick repository and have your CI/CD system do that for you. Also, remember to secure that build environment and secure that the CI/CD pipeline environment itself, as there are a lot of modern attack vectors out there. SolarWinds comes to mind, and others that will target CI/CD systems, and these attack vectors are often overlooked. And thankfully, with all of this work, we do have a lot of automation opportunities in our pipeline, in our CI/CD pipeline, we can bring in to help scan for vulnerabilities.
All right,
and
so
I would like to hand it over to Solomon for that one.
Yeah, and as a 2-minute overview of what Cascade does and how it works, you can add new projects, different types, and then you can go to that project and you can deploy your code from dev to stage to production. But underneath is a pipeline, just like Jenkins, that allows you to edit those pipelines and then ultimately change the different tasks that are happening, and you can change the order. You can add additional tasks or actions, we call them, whether it's a search and replace or whether it's a a script or changing a service. And this is all built on top of Ansible allowing us to be ultimately flexible. So I'll stop there. I'd be happy to give anybody a full demo of the application later. But the point is that we're thinking about security, and our CI/CD tool works with security and compliance. And we definitely are interested in having a conversation with anybody about Cascade or about security and thin repos and creating that ultimate DevOps workflow. Let us know if you have any questions. We'll stick around for a few minutes here. I will get that link to you right here. Start there. We are currently building out, it's a 6-year project, but we're currently building out a full public-facing documentation for people. But give me a second, I'll provide another link as well. For code scanning, I had another slide that I was going to present, but I ran out of time. But essentially, there's 3 different types of scanning: SAST, DAST, and IAST. And it just depends on where they are in the process. Most of our customers bring a tool to us, and then we implement it into the pipeline. But we would be happy to help evaluate some of those as well for customers. That's a quick answer, hopefully, for the code scanning question for you, Scott. Question from Chris: are we building our own packagist clones? No, we don't. Instead, our model is to make sure that you are reviewing that in your pipeline. You get to review those. Obviously, as a company that provides services, we'd be happy to do that at a price point, but that's not part of a core offering that's just available to all customers. Well, I share a link to the slides. I will be happy to share a link to the slides. Oh, I love the question on Lando, DDev, and Doxel, and other local dev. The answer is yes in a number of forms. We are working on an official integration we're in talks, I should say, with Tandem to build an official integration with Lando. However, we do have a relationship with the Lando team, with Tandem, and we can provide Lando files that work with our infrastructure. So there is a unofficial, if you will, integration there. As for DDev and Doxel, no. However, because we provide a Git repository as part of Cascade, we actually install GitLab as part of that. We find that most of those environments do work pretty seamlessly with us. I think if I understand that question from Emmons, we provide a Lando file, and Cascade comes with a GitLab implementation. Obviously, GitLab is the preferred Drupal Git repository software. And with that, it creates a pretty seamless process where you're doing local development in Lando, and when you push your code to your GitLab instance, it automatically gets checked out into dev with Cascade, and then within the Cascade interface, you can push from dev to stage to prod. Great questions. Anybody else? We absolutely support that workflow, Emmons, of branching and pulling, working, pushing back, testing, merging. Absolutely. Again, that's a lot of that's basic Git functionality, and obviously GitLab is associated with, is installed with Cascade. Within Cascade, and I can show a little picture of this. So, for example, you can assign different environments to different branches. And obviously this doesn't have to be master. This could be, my branch. But when you make those changes, then I'm not going to make that change since that doesn't exist. But when you make those changes, when you do a deploy, whether it be an automated deploy because you committed to that branch, or otherwise it will automatically deploy to that environment. You can do promote to actually move it between environments. So the answer is yes. And by the way, I can show you that a full GitLab is included as part of Cascade here. And so we tightly integrated with GitLab. Any other questions? Yeah, Emmons and anyone else, definitely feel free to reach out on Drupal Slack or send me an email. Definitely would love to continue the conversation. I'll stick around here for a little longer, but I'm just saying if anybody wants to get a personalized demo of Cascade, I'd be more than happy to talk about that in SecDevOps. And we're definitely very interested in talking about this.